And then I would also like to introduce you to my colleagues here as well, who will be helping with the webinar today and also with the webinar this afternoon at 2 p.m. CET time. So first of all, I am Yaprak Arda. I am the Marine Program Officer of IUCN Mediterranean. And today, supporting me with this webinar, we have Marion Duchon and Salima Slimani from Tour de Vala. We have Abdelrahim Samari from Medvet. And also we have our IUCN colleague, Emma Hendley, to help us organize this webinar series. So if you were to have any technical questions or if you were to have any other issues, please feel free to use either the chat or the Q&A box as well. So I will be sharing my screen. Okay, so I hope everyone can see the screen and hear me well. So today we are starting with our first webinar, which is about the guidelines for the call for small projects, which is launched by the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium. So the main objective of this call is actually to focus on nature-based solutions to increase the resilience of Mediterranean ecosystems and populations. So this call, the call for small projects, is actually launched by the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium, which you can see that there are many members of this consortium who are the Association International of Forests, the Mediterranean Forests, the PIM initiative focusing on the small islands, MedPan, the organization focusing on protected areas, MedWet focusing on wetlands, Tour de Vala, IUCN, Conservatoire de Littoral, and also WWF as well. So we are all members of the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium, and this is a coalition of regional environmental organizations with extensive expertise and experience in the Mediterranean basin, with joint forces to protect more effectively the natural wealth of this biodiversity hotspot. And this call is launched within the frame of the RESCOM project, which is actually coordinated by the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium. And the RESCOM project is focusing on strengthening the social and environmental resilience of natural areas in the Mediterranean through the implementation of nature-based solutions in close coordination with national and local stakeholders. As IUCN Med, we are the organization within the consortium that is coordinating the call for small projects, of course, with the support of the co-coordinating members of the consortium. The RESCOM project is actually funded by the FEFEM and MAVA Foundation. And at the moment, the project is taking place in 6 countries in the Mediterranean. These countries are Albania, Italy, Montenegro, Morocco, Tunisia, and Turkey. So the main goal of the RESCOM project, which I recently mentioned, is to increase the implementation of demonstrative and replicable nature-based solutions in the Mediterranean. And that's why, as the consortium, we launched this call for small projects aiming at the local environmental civil society organization in the mentioned 6 partner countries. And during this webinar, we are going to mention about the guidelines for this call. And the call for small projects is going to fund 1 project from each one of the 6 countries. And the main focus is going to be the implementation of nature-based solutions. And we are planning on allocating 20,000 euros per small project from each one of the countries. So if we were to look at some of the eligible entities for this call, as mentioned, we are focusing on local and non-profit small civil society organizations that are active in the field of nature and environmental protection, established in accordance with the national legislation in force in one of the eligible countries and with its own governance. So what we will be looking in the criteria of the organizations is that the organizations, they must have a legal status recognized by the national authorities, enabling them to receive grants. They must be able to provide accounting records and precise identification of their main past donors. The organizations, they must be able to prove that they have carried out effective activities over the last 2 years and or present minutes of governance bodies. And the organizations, they must have proven expertise in biodiversity conservation, sustainable development, and project management as well. So the eligible countries for this project is going to be the project pilot site countries. Again, to name will be Albania, Italy, Montenegro, Morocco, Tunisia, and Turkey. And the projects will have to be located in areas with some form of protected area status, within or on the edge of a protected area, or an officially designated zone of high ecological value. In addition, the areas of intervention must include at least 2 different types of natural habitats. It can be related with marine, coastlines, small islands, wetlands, and forests. And the reason for that is the RESCON project and the Mediterranean Biodiversity Consortium. We have an objective, we have a multi-biome ecosystem approach, and we would like to focus on this multi-biome approach. So we will be looking for at least 2 different ecosystems within the project pilot sites. And of course, this is also with the aim of improving the ecological functions of natural areas, considering a continuum of the ecosystems. So just to give an overall idea about what could be some of the eligible topics and what could be some of the eligible and ineligible activities is that for the eligible topics, of course, the preservation of functional ecosystems in good ecological conditions, improving the management of ecosystems for sustainable use by human activities, restoring degraded ecosystems or creating new ones are going to be some of the eligible topics. So these topics are also in alignment with the nature-based solutions approach and the standards. So all the topics must be in alignment with the eligible topics and nature-based solutions. So when we are going to look at the eligible and ineligible activities, for the eligible activities, all activities should include operational implementation of the nature-based solutions using a participatory and inclusive process, guaranteeing involvement of the populations concerned, in particular, also including women and young people. Activities may involve any studies prior to works, provided that they are not the core of the project, work to implement nature-based solutions, actions in the field required to protect or restore ecosystems, consultations, communication, and awareness-raising activities resulting to the project, development and initiation of ecological monitoring measures, monitoring protocols, monitoring equipment, and any other activity contributing to the success of the project. So if we were to look at some of the activities that may not be eligible, so the projects focusing mainly on seminars and training sessions will not be eligible. These activities can still take part within the proposal, but they cannot be the main activities in the proposal. There shouldn't be any repetitive activities, and the running costs of the organizations will not be eligible. There can be including HR costs and some of the management costs within the proposal, but they shouldn't be the major part of the proposal. Also, projects focusing on not nature-related, conservation-related activities also will not be eligible. Projects that are including microcredit activities are not eligible, or land purchase are not eligible. And also projects that are focusing on advocacy campaigns not linked to conservation actions in the fields will not be eligible for funding. So when we look at the duration and start of the projects, the average duration of the small projects will be any time that will be lasting either for a year or a year and a half. and the small projects are scheduled to start no later than May or June of 2025. Activities will have to be completed and all expenditures will be incurred latest by November 2026. So when we come to the funding terms, as mentioned previously, there will be 20,000 euros allocated to each small project from each one of the eligible countries, but there will be one project there will be one project selected from each one of the pilot sites of the RESCOM project. And this 20,000 euro will be corresponding to a maximum of 90% of the total budget, because we will kindly be asking for a co-financing of at least 10% of the total budget, which can either be stated as in kind or in cash. And also, as mentioned, there will be one eligible project per each country. So how is the application and selection process is going to take place? So the project selection is going to take place in 2 phases. So when we look at the initial phase, which we are actually in the initial phase of the call at the moment. So the deadline, as you all may know, to receive the initial brief application forms is by December 8th, and you all will have to submit your proposals to the emails that are stated in the slide, which is the apply@medconsortium.org, or my email as yaprakarda@iucn.org, or my colleague Marianne Ducham's email duchamp@tourdevala.org. So after we receive the initial applications by December 8th, then we will go into the first evaluation phase. And of course, we will be looking at the project relevance. So we will have to see the project justification. We will have to see the project coherence. We will have to see if the objectives and activities address the issues identified, if the activities are well calibrated and prioritized, and are in line with the priorities of the call, which is focusing on nature-based solutions, multi-biome approach, and also gender equality as well. And of course, we will be focusing on the expected results to see if the expected results are tangible and realistic, and the results must also present and the outcomes of the project and they must be in line with the expected timeline of the project. And of course, the sustainability, so demonstration of the project continuation prospects and exploitation of results are also going to be some of the evaluation criteria that we will be following. So after we finalize the first evaluation and have the shortlisted candidates, then we will be announcing the the successful proposals. And then we will move on to the second phase, which is the final selection phase. And we will be reaching out to the shortlisted organizations, and then we will be asking these organizations to submit the full proposal latest by March 30th. And so just to mention, both of the phases and both of the brief or the full application forms, they can either be submitted in French or English, depending on your preference, but unfortunately, no other language. So again, after phase 2, we will receive the full application forms by the 30th of March. Again, all the applications must be sent to the email stated in this slide. And then once the full application forms from the shortlisted organizations are received, we are going to proceed with the final evaluation phase. And so the final evaluation phase, of course, will be focusing on the project relevance with the further detailed information that will be provided. Of course, internal consistency of the activities and objectives, and of course, with budget and timeline as well. And of course, with some of the key priorities that we will be looking within this call. Of course, methodology is very important. Technical and logistical aspects have to be described very clearly, and the protocols should be clear and replicable. Sustainability and replicability of the project is important. So sustainability of some of the activities implemented once the funding has ended, taking into account the risk identified, the potential of replicability of the measures implemented. So estimated budget, of course, should be realistic, and it should be coherent with the project objectives and activities, as well as with the timeline. And the resources allocated to each activity, of course, must be clearly stated and detailed as well. And overall, we will also be looking at the quality and diversity of the project team as well. So it's important for us to know that the organizations have the capacity and they have the adequate team to implement the project out in the field as well. So just to look at some of the timelines that are upcoming. So as you know, we launched the call towards the end of October. So today we are doing 2 webinars regarding the guidelines of the call. So now we are doing the English version of the guidelines. And then this afternoon at 2 p.m. Central European Time, we will have the French version of the same webinar. And of course, we've been focusing and emphasizing and highlighting that nature-based solutions is very important for this call for small projects. So we are actually going to organize a webinar on nature-based solutions, which will take place next week, November 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Eastern European Time. And the language is going to be English, but we will have a French interpretation as well. During this webinar, one of our colleagues from IUCN, who is an expert on nature-based solutions, will giving us the fundamental information about nature-based solutions, and then how to use the self-assessment tool. And we will have presenters giving us some tangible examples from the Mediterranean based on the nature-based solutions that they have been implementing in the region. And then we will have interactive Q&A sessions and some Mentimeter sessions during this webinar. So during this call, my colleagues may share the registration link to this webinar. So we highly believe that it's very important that you have the chance to attend this webinar, because nature-based solutions and the integration of nature-based solutions into the proposals are going to be very crucial. And then the next deadline, the next date is going to be the deadline for the brief application forms, which is the 8th of December. And then January 21st, we will be publishing the results of phase 1. And then soon after, we will be launching phase 2. And then the full applications of phase 2 must be submitted by March 30th. And the results of the application, the full applications will be published as of April 30th. And as we mentioned previously, the goal is to start the project either May or June of 2025, so that we will be able to finalize the project before or latest by November 2026. So as mentioned in the call or in the guidelines, you can reach to us through apply@medconsortium.org, or through my email or Marion's email. If you were to have any specific questions till the 8th of December, we will be here to answer your questions. So you will have the chance to interact with us till 1st of December before the deadline, because we would like to finalize all the technical questions before the submission deadline as well, so that it will give enough time for the organizations to amend and finalize and submit their proposals by 8th of December. So for the moment, that is more or less in general the guidelines of the call for small projects. I will be pausing and stop sharing my screen so that I can see everyone, and so that if you were to have any questions, we can open the floor for any specific questions or comments you may have regarding the call for small projects guidelines. So I am stopping. Yes. So let's see. We have a question from Edwin. I don't know, Edwin, if you would like to take the floor or if you would prefer me to read your question. So Edwin from Albania is asking about raising awareness campaign for the topic in concern. Is it allowed, and what is the percentage of the salaries allowed in the expenditure? So yes, awareness raising activities and communication activities, we are going to allow them to, of course, because they are very important. So we are going to allow these activities to take place within the proposals, but we are not going to fund proposals that are just focusing on fundraising or communication activities, because our main goal is going to fund projects that are focusing on implementation, tangible implementation activities out in the field, just focusing on the nature-based solutions and also focusing on the multi-biome approach. Of course, raising awareness and communications are important parts. Yes, they can be stated. So at the moment, we cannot give a specific percentage, but we are definitely saying that it cannot be 100% of the whole proposal. So in terms of the HR, well, Marion, you can also jump in at any moment as well. So we know that HR costs or management costs are very important for all the organizations. But we also would like to see that majority of the funding that we will be allocating will be focusing on the implementation activities rather than the running costs. So it will be very important to see the balance between the HR management costs and the actual implementation activities. I hope, Edwin, I was able to reply to your question.
Maybe, yeah,
Marion.
Yeah, hi everyone. Now, just to add on this, we have actually put a threshold in the guidelines for this HR cost, which should be no more than 40% of the total budget that will be required, except the co-funding that organizations can bring.
Thank you, Marion, for specifying the percentage. So I also see there is another question by Mohammed, and then I will give the floor to Marco and then VM as well. So Mohammed is asking, the funding is just for the research conduction or can also be used partially for funding the researchers? So within your proposal, if you need to do some preliminary studies with some experts or consultants, if you need to accumulate data, if you need some preliminary assessments, yes, you can allocate a budget. So you can allocate budget to experts, consultants. So this will depend on your proposal or the project or the objectives and activities of your proposal. But yes, you can allocate budgets to researchers, to research institutions or universities that will be working with you. But of course, everything has to be related with the objective and activities of the proposal. Okay, so yes, you're welcome, Mohammed. So now I will give the floor to Marco and then to VM.
Yes, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you for this Q&A session. I have actually a couple of questions regarding the multi-ecosystem approach. In that, I would like to know if should the project then include two sites, for example, one in a coastline and another one in a wetland, or is more like within one of the mentioned ecosystem, 2 or plus habitats, for example, many habitats in a wetland, let's say.
So actually it's the latter, the second one that you just mentioned. So we prefer to have one pilot site which has multi-biome, multi-ecosystems within one pilot site, rather than having two different pilot sites, one with, let's say, a marine ecosystem and another one with wetland ecosystem. So we rather have a pilot site that has the marine, the coastal, the terrestrial, the wetland, or the lagoon, or the salt marshes. Of course, not all of them, but at least two ecosystems, different ecosystems within one pilot site.
Okay, so then my other question is then, are these two pilot sites can be like distant, like further away? Because I understand that, for example, having such a variety of biomes in a small area can be quite difficult, no? So does it have to be on the same spot, or can the sites be like distant?
So, well, we will be looking for one site that has this multi-biome ecosystem, not two different sites, two different ecosystems. So, so depending on the site, if you have a protected area, which is quite large, and if it has all the multi-biomes, then it's okay, but it depends on, you know, how you can manage a very big protected area with multi, you know, ecosystems. So we do not want two different sites with, you know, one ecosystems in each one of the sites. We rather have one site, big or small, depending on what you will be proposing, that has the multi ecosystems in the same area. So the distance between the ecosystems, yes, we can see that in some of the protected areas, the distances are very close, but in some of the, you know, protected areas, the distance can be a bit far. But it will be nice to know a pilot site which has the interaction of these multi ecosystems, that has an interaction, you know, there's an interaction between the ecosystems. If that is the pilot site, that is possible. We have these examples within the RESCOM projects. That is why these pilot sites are within the RESCOM project at the moment during this phase. So each pilot site from each one of the countries actually have multi-ecosystems in their territories within the protected areas.
All right, thank you then.
You're welcome, Marco. So next, we will give the floor to Wiem.
Thank you so much, Yaprak. It was a very nice presentation and very clear. I want to ask you about the percentage allowed for the management fees and missions. For example, we have we're gonna establish an experimentation in an oasis in a special and specific ecosystem, and it requires some mission fees for transport of researchers and some for the prototype and something like this. You know, is it allowed to put this in the project, and is it possible to fund it? And I would be grateful if you can give us a small, how to say it, an overview about percentage allowed for each, for example, section, for example, for human resource, for management fees, for transportation, for, you know, so that we can know exactly how to prepare the project and accompany to all the fees, you know. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I will try to answer by each question. So if I were to miss something, please let me know. So in terms of the management costs, like the overheads, of course, depending on the organization, each organization have different management or overhead costs. Sometimes, you know, it can be 8%, 10% or 12%. Yes, you can include them within your proposal, but you have to state as a separate line how much these management fees and costs will be. Like some organizations, it's 10%. So you have to state what are the overhead percentages, but it depends on the organization. And then in terms of the missions, yes, you can allocate budget to missions. And as I think I replied to Mohammed, if you need specific field missions or preliminary assessments, or if you need to work with experts, or if you need to work with, you know, certain universities or academia or research institutions, yes, you can allocate budget. But of course, you know, we will be focusing on tangible outcomes of some of the activities. We understand that, yes, the assessments, it is to know the, let's say, the baseline, or to have the general idea about the circumstances or the conditions. But it's important to also show that with this data, what are going to be some of the related activities, relevant activities that you will be doing, and what will you be, you know, achieving as a result of this research or assessments. So the proposal should not just focus on research or let's say assessments, but anything related with the data that will be accumulated from this kind of research should turn into some tangible activities and some tangible results as well. And in terms of the percentages, Marion, I don't know if you will have the chance maybe to look through the guidelines, because we have some suggested percentages. Like we said, the human resources cannot exceed 40%. We will be asking for 10% in-kind co-funding. So within the guidelines, actually in the brief application form, and once we launch the full application form, you will more or less have some restrictions. So we didn't specify every percentage for every budget item, because we don't know what kind of a proposal the organizations will be submitting. We just gave some limitations to certain budget activities, such as the HR costs, such as the co-funding, or maybe the overheads. So other than that, it will be upon the organizations to build and construct their own budgets. So that is more or less that you will have some freedom, but with some limitations that we set out for this call for small projects. So I hope I was able to
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I see another question from Aicha. So can we allocate budget needed to purchase some specific materials needed for the implementation? What is the maximum amount? So as we said, you can purchase some specific materials depending on the needs for the specific objective or activity. But as I mentioned previously, purchasing specific materials should not exceed certain, it shouldn't, let's say, take part of the entire budget. So if it's going to be like, something that will support with the implementation of an activity that is focusing on nature-based solutions, and if it's a crucial instrument or a material, yes, it is. But it is preferred that not 80% of the budget will be allocated to specific purchasing equipments or materials. Okay, so so in the meanwhile, Marion is also replying with some exact percentages and numbers in the chat. So any other questions or comments regarding the guidelines or the upcoming webinar on nature-based solutions? And at the moment, if you do not have any questions, no worries, because we will be available to answer your questions till the 1st of December by email. So because sometimes when you start drafting the actual forms, then questions come into mind. So we will be available to answer them in the upcoming days and weeks as well. So for the moment, I don't see any questions or any hands. I don't know if Marion, do you have anything to add that may be crucial, or Abdar or Salima, in case we missed some crucial information?
Thanks, Yaprak. No, I think you said everything. Maybe I don't know if you have also had the chance to look at the concept note template. If you have any question on the format of the concept note to be filled in, not that we are requesting that you can send us this concept note completed, as well as the legal status of your organization. That are the two main documents that are needed for your application to be accepted. So don't hesitate if you have any question on the template. We can help on this also.
I see another question by Marco. So Marco is asking about the self-assessment tool on NBS. So should we use this tool to plan the conservation actions in the proposal? Actually, this is a very good question. And that's one of the reasons that we want to do this nature-based solutions webinar next week, which will also be mentioning about the self-assessment tool. So it is important that you apply the standards and criteria of the nature-based solutions, and self-assessment tool comes very handy. Let's say when you are actually drafting a proposal or when you are implementing a project. So next week during the nature-based solutions webinar, we will be giving the fundamental information about the standard, the criteria, and how to use the self-assessment tool. So we can say that it will be beneficial if you were to have the general information of how to use the self-assessment tool. So we're not going to strictly say, yes, you have to integrate the self-assessment tool when you are drafting the proposal, but we suggest that it will be very useful if you were to be able to use the self-assessment tool, because it will help throughout the implementation of the project as well, just to check with the nature-based solutions implementation. So I see, yeah, you're welcome, Marco. And then I see another question from Albania. So do we need to provide invoices for the indirect costs? Thank you. So if you are selected as one of the organizations that will be receiving the funding, and of course during the implementation of the project, we will be asking for financial reporting as well. So it is important that you get to state the expenditures that you are going to spend during the implementation of the year. For the indirect costs, such as like the overheads, you may just need to provide us with information about your organization and rule of your organizations regarding the overheads, or maybe some other, let's say, management aspects of your organizations. But everything that you will be budgeting and you will be spending during the financial reporting, you will have to state those invoices or the expenditures, because it will be important for us to see that the financial expenses are irrelevant with the implementation activities. Any questions or comments? Welcome, Albana. So I think at the moment we don't have any questions or comments. So hope the guidelines were helpful. And as we said, next week, Nature-Based Solutions webinar will definitely be very much helpful. And we are always here to reply to any of the questions or concerns you may have before the deadline of the submission of the brief application form. So if there are no further questions or comments, I think we can finalize the webinar. So I would like to thank my colleagues for the coordination of this webinar, and also the participants who joined us today. And just as a reminder that we will have the French version of this webinar today at 2 p.m. if you would like to join. And please do not forget to register for next week's Nature-Based Solutions webinar, because you will directly be receiving the link for the Zoom. So it's important that you register for the webinar as well. So thank you very much, everyone, and also good luck to everyone. We are actually very excited to be receiving the full application forms in the upcoming month. So we just want to wish good luck to each and every one of you who will be applying. Okay, so thank you very much and have a nice day, everyone.